DJ Event Planner will change the way you manage and run your business. Streamline all of your procedures and software into one easy-to-manage system. DJ Event Planner, the ultimate online planning tool.
Good evening and welcome to all of you out there watching across YouTube and Facebook. We are broadcasting tonight to all the DJ channels and all of the photo booth channels because tonight's show, for those small business operators out there who have been wondering about the PPP and all this different stuff, tonight is the night we're going to have some answers, we hope.
We will have some answers.
We will have some answers. Jerry Bazata is with me tonight. Good evening, Jerry.
Good evening, John. How are you?
I am doing so well. Thank you for coming back once again and sharing your knowledge and what you've been learning as you've been going through the process of working with your clients with helping to finance with the small business loans and things that are out there. Let's start off. Before we jump into the PPP and the information that was just released yesterday, I believe it was,
yes.
You mentioned before we came on air, talking a little bit about the PPP and the unemployment relationship.
Right. I have received more than 36 calls this week about people that have not only gone to unemployment, but have applied and gotten the PPP loan. Mm-hmm. So what I'm about to share with you is a conversation I had with one of the key people at the SBA, and it was a follow-up to a lot of these phone inquiries. And I'm going to stress the fact that the SBA, the various departments of employment, the idea was either you were going to have payroll protection or you were going to have unemployment. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes.
There is no free money out there. And I'm quoting this individual specifically. The idea was it was one or the other. So the biggest dilemma that people are facing right now is, how do I either claim the unemployment? How do I continue to collect with the $600? But I also got the PPP. Clearly, the answer is you are in a dilemma right now.
Okay.
Because it was supposed to be one or the other. All right. The unemployment plus the $600 boost that was put in place was to replace. They allowed you to go on unemployment as a self-employed individual, which is the first time in history that I'm aware of, plus the $600 boost that ends July. The PPP program was really put in place that, no, I don't want to apply for unemployment. I want to go for the payroll protection program, which was really driven behind the fact of not having people go on unemployment and rather being continued to be paid by their employer, and their employer allowing them the ability to fund health benefits, 401k plan. So it was a substitute for unemployment.
Right. Mm-hmm.
All right. So I don't have any advice on how you should manage this. I don't have any specific advice in terms of should you use this money first or that money first. What I'm reading is it should have been one or the other. Mm. All right. So if you write yourself a check under the PPP program and then you were also filing a claim with unemployment, you really were double dipping, is what you were doing. The fortunate thing is the payroll protection program, which is the first real sort of positive news that we got, is that, it's been stretched out to 24 weeks. Mm-hmm. So the only thing you have to look at, or what you have to look at now, is, do I not get the forgiveness on the payroll protection program? Do I use part of it for expenses? Do I use it as a long-term loan? I can't give you that answer. John's not going to give you that answer. It's something you've got to wrestle with and make the determination yourself as to how you're going to handle it. So,
would you recommend, Jerry, a person talk to their accountant in this situation to get a clarification?
I would talk to your accountant and see what your accountant says you should do. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of town hall meetings going on between regional SBA offices, the Department of Unemployment Compensation, in terms of how they're going to look into this. Is it something they're going to try to investigate? Is it something they're going to try to catch people on? I have no idea. But you just need to be conscious that this has been raised to a level of concern that people were double dipping. And where it leads from here, I have no idea. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't have any definite answer. So what you really need to do is look at it. Fine, hey, you know what? I may not ask for forgiveness. And again, we're not talking huge dollar amounts. I think the majority of the audience we have out there, we're not talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. We're not talking $2 million. But I, in my personal opinion, and this is just Jerry Bazata speaking, is I think more of the risk is going to be with the Department of Unemployment. If they start investigating this, that's where your risk is going to be. It's not going to be with the SBA.
So one thing that a person could do, and you kind of were mentioning this in that, is that it could become just a loan, a very favorable interest loan that let's say they borrowed $10,000 or they get $10,000 from the PPP. If they don't use it at all for payroll, it becomes a $10,000 loan.
It's a $10,000 loan. So let's look at, John, the next part of it is what they did was with the forgiveness, they lowered the threshold to 60%. So 60% of whatever you achieved. So if you got $10,000, $6,000 was to be used towards payroll. $4,000 could be used towards expenses related to the business, your utilities, your mortgage payment, your rent payments on your business office. You can use it towards those expenses. Mm-hmm. So you really kind of need to sit down with a calendar. And if you remember, we talked on Monday, those old paper calendars, I don't give them out at the bank anymore, but kind of look at when does your unemployment run out? When did you get your PPP money? Do you have the 24 weeks? Do you deal with the PPP money afterwards? So a number of DJs called me and said, I'm on unemployment, but I'm thinking about applying for the PPP loan. And I just talked to two people. One is a photographer and a DJ. And I said to them, guys, you need to be cautious of this because you're now applying saying that I'm applying for the PPP loan before June 30th and I'm not going to go on unemployment. And they literally admitted they're on unemployment right now. And I said, you got to be cautious of that because it was one or the other. It was not intended to be both. So I don't want to beat a dead horse on that, but I want to be clear that that was really what was coming down from the SBA is payroll protection was to be a substitute for unemployment.
And the PPP was also to pay staff if a person had a business that had staff, that it was eligible money to be covering their payroll to keep them off unemployment.
Right. And there are a number of photo booth operators that did reach out to me that have photo booth people that run the photo booths for them. So they may have a dozen photo booths and we're averagely doing 6 or 7 gigs and have a staff of 5 people that they wanted to continue to pay. And they use the payroll protection money for that, not paying themselves, but paying those employees and then filed for themselves. And we're not going to give any of the money to themselves. That was kind of a smart move because what they did was they filed unemployment for themselves only, but used purely the payroll protection money to pay those employees to keep them on staff and keep them employed.
Jerry, you're familiar with the early EIDL, what that was to be used for, or how did that fit into the picture?
Well, the early EIDL, again, was an emergency disaster loan. And if you look at the loan notes for those of you who took the EIDL, it was intended to give you sort of a jump start and give you some capital while they were going through the working process. When you go to file for the forgiveness, if you received an EIDL loan, an advance grantable portion, that is going to be subtracted from your forgiveness because it's forgiven already. You can't get 2 forgivenesses. So let's walk through this. I'm a sole proprietorship. I got $1,000. I have $10,000 payroll protection loan that I acquired to help fund me during this period. When you go to get the forgiveness, right on the application, it's going to ask you, did you apply for EIDL? You check the box, yes. It's going to ask the amount that you initially received, and it's going to ask you for your application number. All right. Mm-hmm. What they're going to do is, again, if you got $10,000 and you got an initial advance of $1,000 that was forgivable, the grantable portion, it's going to be subtracted from what your PPP forgiveness is. So ultimately, you're going to have $1,000 loan out there.
Okay.
All right. That is one change. I know the SBA, it's kind of cumbersome, but that's the way the legislation came down.
Just questions are starting to come in. If you guys have got questions, by the way, it doesn't matter Facebook or YouTube. I think they're all propagating in. Just ask your questions, put them in the chat, and I will bring these to Jerry as we go along.
Yep. So let's walk through. There's going to be, for those of you, and before we get to the questions, let's kind of cover this piece here. Yeah. There are going to be two forgiveness applications. The first one is going to be the EZ form. So just like you have a 1040 EZ, you're going to have an EZ forgiveness application. Pretty much it just asks you a lot of standard questions. The name of your business, the name of the number of employees, what did you receive, and how did you spend it? And the boxes are very simple. It's several pages. There is a series of questions on there that you need to read very carefully, because it's going to ask you, did you maintain employees? Did you not reduce salaries by 25%? Did you not reduce staff by 25%? So you need to go through those questions very carefully. It's also going to ask you that this loan was necessary in order to keep employees while you did not have income. Okay. It's going to ask you, did you get any other assistance? All of this is questions that are there. You can go out to the SBA website and you can find these EZ forms. I would get yourself a copy and start preparing through that. It's then going to ask you to send supporting documentation. That supporting documentation is going to be your payroll records, your checks, your copies of your bills. If you use a payroll service, getting that piece of it. You will submit this application along with the supporting documentation. Now, don't run out and start doing this and shipping it to the bank. You want to wait till the bank contacts you, because a lot of banks are going to try to do this electronically via various online portals to make it easy. So you'll be able to attach the information. So if you have checks, put them in a PDF file. If you have payroll records, QuickBook records, start putting them in PDF file. Once you submit this, the bank will review this for completeness. The bank does not give you the forgiveness thumbs up or thumbs down. Once they know that all the information is there, that what you say on the application, you have the supporting documentation, they are going to submit it to SBA. SBA will make the decision whether it's forgivable or not.
Certainly.
So the more, I will tell you, the more accurate, the more complete your information is. Pay very close attention to asking all the questions. I think there's 2 or 3 that ask you to initial the question. Make sure you do that, because you're going to submit it in, and there's going to be volumes of this going through. When you look at the amount of loans that are out there, you want to make sure it's complete and accurate, because they're going to want to do this as quickly as possible. Those who got much larger loans, there is a regular forgiveness application. It does have an appendix to it that asks you to get into more detail about the number of employees, the number of full-time equivalents. It does ask you some more specific information about employees you retained, employees you didn't retain. So in both of the forgiveness applications, as they recreated them this week, there is some leniency for those of you who maybe are photo booth operators and people decided they wanted to go on unemployment, and you offered to pay them and you didn't. That's where that 25% leeway comes into play. So, but I think for the majority, and I'm gonna venture to guess 90 to 95% of the viewers out there are going to be dealing with the easy application.
Yeah, we're getting questions coming in there. So you talked about the forgiveness part. Bridge over to the 8-week to 24-week change.
Yeah.
Let's head that direction next, and then we'll get to some questions here. So you guys keep putting the questions in the chat. I'll spool them up, and we'll hit them here before we wrap up. So thank you, you guys. They're coming in pretty quickly now. So
yeah. Again, the other basis is before June. If you got the loan before June 5th, they are allowing you up to 24 weeks to spend that money. It doesn't mean you have to wait. You don't have to choose 8 weeks or 24 weeks. You have up to 24 weeks. So again, you can submit the forgiveness application anytime you want up until December 31st, 2020. After December 31st, 2020, then you can't seek forgiveness. It becomes a permanent loan. The other thing is the SBA is closing off the application process as of June 30th. So there will be no extension to the PPP program at this point. It will end as of June 30th. And I think that the sole reason there is we're seeing states reopen, we're seeing businesses reopen.
Right.
And I know a lot of us in the gig industry, DJs, photo booth operators, photographers, yeah, our weddings have been killed through most of this year. But again, this program is targeted at all types of businesses. It's restaurants, hospitality, businesses are reopening, retail is reopening. You know, when you weigh the vast majority of small businesses out there, you know, they're reopening, they're beginning to do revenue and sales. That's where they're really basing it on. So
if we take June, the end of June is of course for the applying for the PPP, and it was fairly for most people who once they filled out the application, it was fairly quick. They were getting their funding probably within a week. Mm-hmm. So if a person does that, let's say that they fill next Monday, they fill out the paperwork. Most likely they would, if they qualify, they'll have funding by Friday. Then that's going to be an 8-week forgiveness period from the beginning.
That's going to be an 8-week, right?
Or an 8-week payment.
Pretty much states have opened up, businesses have opened up. So that will be the 8-week forgiveness. So really, again, the 24 weeks is anybody who got the money deposited to their account prior to June 5th.
So then if we look at someone who maybe got it June 1st, they would have June, July, August, September, October?
Yep, October.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, so I'm just doing my math right there. So,
yep.
And that's just meaning that could be used as payroll for those periods of time.
For those periods of time, right.
Gotcha.
Because right on the application, it's going to ask you from what period to what period did you use this payroll for? So when you look at the application, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to put on readers, okay?
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Yep. You know, it specifically asks the period that you're looking for the forgiveness. So you're going to want to make sure you have your loan note in front of you. You're going to want to make sure you have your PPP loan number. It's going to ask for the number of employees at the time of loan application, the number of employees at the forgiveness application. How did your payroll schedule go? Was it weekly? Was it biweekly? Was it twice a month? Was it monthly? Other. What's your covered period? Alternative covered payroll periods if applicable. And then it's very simple. It's going to ask you what your payroll costs were, what your business mortgage insurance payments were, business mortgage interest payments, business rent or lease payments, business utility payments. You total them up. You add the amounts lines 1 through 5. You put in the FTD reductions if there is any there. You multiply the total by line number 7, and then it tells you your PP loan amount and then your loan amount of forgiveness. So it's all easy on one single page. And then, like I said, when you get to page 2, that's where the questions become very serious. Things like I have submitted to the lender the required documentation verifying payroll costs, the existence of obligations and services, if applicable, prior to February 15th to 20, and eligible business mortgage insurance payments, business rent, and so forth. So there's a checklist you have to go through when you're doing the easy application process. So, and again, for those of you who have larger payrolls, there is a Appendix A and a PPE fee schedule that's also attached to that too. So again, a lot of the accountants, if you're larger, can help you through this process. But for most of you, the step-by-step process is going to be easy. It's far better. The first forgiveness application we saw come out was like 9 pages. So this got from 9 down to 2. So
much better.
Yeah, much better.
Much better.
So, John, do you want to fire away at some of the questions?
Well, before we get to the questions, now, are you expecting any more major changes, or do you think this is pretty much going to settle in now? I
think this is pretty much settled in.
Okay.
And I think the only changes we will see is once they start flushing these through, again, I think the best guess is we're going to start seeing the first flood of these starting to hit around July 1st. I think that's when we're going to see most of the people starting to submit these. Again, a lot of the banks are gearing up to try to do this as simple, easy, and electronically as possible.
Excellent. Okay, so let's get into some of the questions. Let's see. First one talks about their sole proprietor, and they had gotten the EIDL, PPP, and the unemployment. And their PPP amount was 11,000, and they paid themselves a payroll of 6,600 over a 4-week period. And during that time, they didn't take unemployment. Was that the best way to handle that over a 4-week period, or should they have done it differently?
I really, that I can't answer for you. I mean, that's, again, you didn't collect unemployment, you didn't file unemployment. You used the PPP first, and then you went to unemployment. I believe you followed what the best practices were. Again, the SBA and the forgiveness program is not looking at how you paid it out. All they want to know is, did you use it for payroll? Mm-hmm. What is your covered period? So if you want to say that it was from this week to this week, this is what I used it for, this is what I paid myself, and these are the 4 weeks that I'm claiming under this program, that's what you're going to put on the application.
And then,
so that's going to be your covered period.
And then once the PPP is exhausted, for some people, they'll probably end up going back on unemployment, I would guess.
I would guess that's probably what the rule is going to be. I mean, there are some people who just paid themselves and told unemployment, look at, I'm sorry, I paid myself this week. I used the PPP program and declared it to the unemployment, which I think is probably the most smartest thing to do, was the most correct thing to do. So again, your covered period is, where did you pay yourself and how did you use it? So if that person got $11,000 and they paid $6,000 over a 4-week period, because that's what they would have earned doing
events,
3 weddings, let's call 4 weddings, and a funeral, whatever. That's what they paid themselves. So that was the covered period. That's going to be your covered period on your PPP forgiveness application.
Excellent. So how would a sole proprietor show proof of paying themselves?
Cancel checks.
Cancel checks. So they've got
you're going to write yourself a check. And again, cancel checks is what they're looking for. So for a sole proprietorship, you should have written yourself a check, and in the memo section, put payroll for week of whatever date it is.
And where does that, so there's some people out there, if their business account is basically what they use for everything. Not a great way to do it, but they do. With the check, does it have to go to another account, like a personal account, or?
Again, they're asking for canceled checks. So absent of any specific minute details that SBA is releasing, if you can show proof, hey, look, here's payroll. So what I would submit is, if I was a sole proprietorship, I would submit the copy of the canceled check, indicate it's payroll, and then on your QuickBooks or whatever accounting system you're with, put payroll owner and put a dollar amount that you paid yourself for that period. Mm-hmm. So you may need to create an income statement and balance sheet that you submit along with it, and one of your line items says payroll to owner or owner's compensation, and that dollar amount is in there.
Excellent. So again, paper trail, cancel check.
Paper trail. Cancel check is going to be the best. That's what the bank's going to look for is did you write yourself a check for this money?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
so that's going to be the best alternative.
The next question. The single who got that EDIL, the $1,000 grant, and they've lost at least $25,000 in gigs. Is there a low interest SBA loan out there available that's still available for this person?
Yeah, the EDIL loans are still out there. So I'm a little bit surprised that whoever has gotten the initial $1,000, they haven't had a follow up with the EDIL to say, here's what you qualify for. Because remember, if you applied for the EIDL loan, okay, and what they were doing was they were jump starting you with an initial in the first round before it got refunded, is they were doing based on number of employees from $1,000 to $10,000 that was forgivable as a grant. And then once your application got processed, so when the application was received, you got that quick kick. And then once your application was processed, you should have gotten an email that said, here's what you've been approved for in an EIDL loan. So I would kind of follow up with the SBA, because you should have an active application number that you can follow up with the SBA on to say, hey, where is this loan? Because again, that was part of the whole EIDL process, was loans up to a certain dollar amount, so that it was providing you working capital for the business.
And the emergency very quick, because I think some people were like almost 24-hour turnaround with the EIDL initially.
Yep.
It was very quick.
Initially. And again, that was that sort of that quick grant jumpstart to get some money in your hands, and then actually going through the application process. So for that person there, something's gone awry, and they need to reach out to the SBA, because you should have then got, when you got that 1,000, shortly thereafter, or a period of 2 weeks after you got that, you should have gotten an email from the SBA that says, hey, sign in, and then here's what you qualify for. We're going to offer you a loan up to, and it was a grid on it that said from $1,000 to $25,000. You chose what you want. You then went through, put in your verified your bank account information, any other information they needed, and then you got a response back, usually within 24 to 48 hours, that says you've been approved for X loan, which was 3.95%, payable over 30 years. It would have told you what your monthly payments were. And then once you accepted it, you would actually get the actual note and loan agreement, which you would then DocuSign and submit back to the SBA.
So I had a question from a person earlier today who was talking about that particular loan, the disaster relief loan. That was the 30-year. Now, for the first 12 months, there weren't any payments that are required for that.
Correct.
Yeah, but
there's payments required for the first 12 months. And the 12 months start from when they deposit the money in your account. So if the money gets deposited on June 20th of 2020, your first payment, you're going to have 12 months deferred. So your first payment is actually going to be due June 20th, 2021.
But interest will accrue from the beginning.
Yeah, interest is going to accrue from the beginning. So again, 3.95% on $10,000 is $395 a year, divided by 12 months. It's not a lot of interest that's going to accrue. So, yeah.
Excellent. Okay, excellent. Continuing on here. When it came to the payroll, cutting sole proprietor cutting the payroll check to themselves, do they need to do any kind of withholding with that, or what would go on with that?
Well, again, if you set up quarterly tax payments, that's correct. But again, if you don't have a payroll system in place for yourself, you're not going to have anything to withhold, because again, as a sole proprietorship, you don't pay your self-employment tax until you file your tax returns, unless you're filing quarterlies. So if you are filing quarterlies, okay, which, again, for the first quarter, you have before, February, prior to or post February 10th, yes, if you have any quarterly taxes, you're going to claim that as part of the PPP. But no, you don't have to do withholding.
So it'd be basically for those who are sole proprietor, Schedule C, they just do it at the end of the year, as they typically would.
And again, John, let's go back to the one question where you said, a lot of people don't. If you're a sole proprietorship, you need a separate business account. Yeah, I don't care where you are. You shouldn't be commingling your personal funds with your business funds. Okay. So whether you're a sole proprietorship and you're doing this part-time, or it's hobby income and you're earning $20,000 a year, you really should have a separate account.
Yes.
Okay. Anybody who doesn't have a separate account for their business, it's shame on you. I mean, from a banker's perspective, that's more account fees that I get. I'm only joking, everyone. Okay. But yeah, you should always have a separate account. And this would have been a great purpose of, okay, I wrote a check for my DJ business, my DBA, okay, and I put it in my personal account. So now you got actually the cancel check going that you're putting it into your personal, you're paying yourself. So
next question. With the payroll, if it's now extended to 24 weeks, can I change my weekly payroll to myself? So I wonder if there was a higher number when it was 8 weeks, and now it's going to be trying to spread it out over the 24 weeks?
Yeah. Again, if you want to spread it out over the 24 weeks, that's your choice. Again, they're giving, and everybody's, let me kind of back up here. Is the extension of the 24 weeks was really driven by the restaurant industry, the beauty salons, the nail salons, the massage parlors, the legitimate massage parlors, the tattoo parlors, okay? Those businesses that were restricted from opening. Let's go back to the history. When the payroll protection program came out, it was thought that this nation would be in lockdown for 8 weeks and then we would reopen up.
Mm-hmm.
When the governors looked at the states and said, no, this is getting out of control. We need to have lockdown longer. No, we're not going to allow restaurants to open up. Okay. Many of these restaurants, hotels, motels, salons, hair salons, nail salons, retail stores were in closure in April. So they went back to Congress and said, we can't open up. We can't do business. You know, we have people that are afraid to come back to work. We can't retain employees. All right. They're nervous. We can't open up. We can't do business. We need some basis here. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Some employers, their employees said, look, I want to go out on unemployment. Okay. And for a restaurant, think of it this way here. There's a significant startup cost to get going and get ramped up again.
Yes. Yeah.
And one of that is payroll. So, you know, a lot of restaurant owners were concerned. Outside dining, are people going to come out and eat? I can only go to 50% capacity. Am I going to be successful? So when they looked at extending the weeks out, it was allowing these businesses to get ramped up and get going.
Mm-hmm.
For gig employees and you guys who are DJs, you know you're not doing any weddings in June, July, or if they are, they're minimal. Okay. Most of us are not re-ramping up until probably August, September. Most likely September, October is when we're going to see it coming in. So again, how do you want to pay yourself?
Mm-hmm.
You've got X amount of dollars. Do you want to be prudent? Do you want to be self-managing where you say, look, I'm going to take a portion of this every single week, so I'm not going to blow it all at once? That's really a personal preference. So again, the 24 weeks was provided so that businesses that started to reopen, at least were not forced to spending all the money and had nothing to reopen to. That's why they also reduced the payroll amount to allow them to carry the interest so they weren't going to the banks for forgiveness on their mortgage payments, on their loan payments,
Mm-hmm.
giving them some little more breath to deal with. So this was very fluid because of the fact that we remained in lockdown much longer than we ever anticipated.
Yeah, exactly. Who would have guessed how this would all come together? Yes, so this is being recorded. It will be available on Facebook. So if you're watching it on Facebook, you'll be able to see it. Otherwise, go out to youtube.com/discjockeynews, or just search for the title of this on YouTube. It'll pop up. It's actually being broadcast to 3 different YouTube channels, and then I think about 7 different spots on Facebook tonight. So it will be recorded, and you'll be able to find those videos on those channels later. So whatever you're seeing it now, it'll be there later.
And for those of you, again, John and I are doing our best that as major changes come about, or as we see this beginning to develop in the forgiveness program, we're going to share with you what knowledge we have. I mean, every day I'm getting a multitude of emails giving me information on this. It's extremely fluid. And again, they're trying to look at this not to be difficult, not to make it cumbersome. And I'm very grateful that the SBA realized and looked at it and said, we need to make this process simple. We need to understand that this was intended to provide some type of financial relief to the small business community, and that's what it was intended for. So,
excellent. I think we've gotten through our questions here.
Good.
Wonderful. So, we're hoping that this is pretty set. If things change, Jerry, we'll bounce back in here.
We'll bounce back in again, and we'll certainly sit down with people. We'll certainly, we'll share whatever information we can. Your best bet is just continually go out to the SBA website. They are always publishing the interim rules. There's a number of links out there. And again, as we've said in the past, if you want to reach out to me with specific questions, more than happy to kind of guide you. I can't give you advice as to whether you should take this or that, or you should use this first, or you should use that first. My real expertise is kind of giving you what I know in terms of how they're going to look at this, how they're going to view it, again, earlier on in the show when we talked about the unemployment, it's just that question, and it has been raised quite a bit. And understandably, it is a tough economic time for all of us.
Certainly.
Those DJs and those people who own photo booth companies that have sought other forms of income, great. We are all doing what we can to keep food on the table, a roof over our head, and a smile on our family's face.
I do have a question that popped in here. They were talking about with their staff who's on unemployment, would the PPP be able to pick up after that? My understanding is right now the government's $600 a week bump will expire at the end of July.
Correct.
And if it's going to be one of these things that as DJs that we're going to be ramping up for maybe a September, end of August, there's going to be a period of a few weeks where your staff members aren't going to be eligible for that unemployment anymore. And if a person had that PPP, then you could actually, let's say that early August, you could be utilizing that for payroll and getting them back in the office and training and ready to go for.
Correct. Again, if you're going to use it to bring employees back and you're within that 24-week period, absolutely. That's what it could be used for. There are some companies that are looking at that avenue of we're trying to secure contracts. We're trying to get back up to speed. So yes, we'll bring employees back as we can, put them back on payroll and use the payroll protection. Classic example with restaurants. So again, restaurants couldn't bring employees back. There was nothing they could do. They didn't want them just sitting around. They allowed them to collect unemployment. And now that they're bringing these employees back, they're using this payroll protection money and taking advantage of the 24 weeks.
Excellent. Sounds good. That's what I just kind of clarified, and that helps explain that part for them. So, Jerry, if people want to reach out and ask any questions more in a private nature, what's the best way for them to do that?
Again, Facebook, LinkedIn, Jerry Bazata on LinkedIn, Jerry Bazata on Facebook, my website or email Jerry at Maine, like the state Maine, discjockey.com, or just give me a buzz. And more than happy to talk to you at any time that I can. Happy to provide links where it's possible. And John, maybe that's next time we can share some of those links via Zoom. I haven't gotten that sophisticated yet, but we might be able to kind of work that in somehow so people can actually see it. So
excellent. Yeah, we'll drop those in a couple of, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks. Jerry's going to be joining me on a Monday night, and we're going to be talking about we're doing our 10 weeks of how to start up your business, either a DJ business on Monday night. Wednesday night is photo booth. Jerry's going to be joining me here in a couple of weeks again. You guys can check that out. It's on DJN TV pretty much every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We've got live shows going out there to you. So, Jerry, thanks for being with tonight. I really appreciate your time, and I'm looking forward to being back in a couple of weeks.
Sounds good, John. Looking forward to it. Everyone, stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you guys for being with us tonight. Good night, everyone.
Have a good evening.